So, welcome to Building Women, the place where we celebrate and learn from trailblazing women who are building innovative businesses and careers. This is a space to understand the power of overcoming obstacles, because overcoming adversity is what ultimately builds success. Every month, I'll be asking a new interviewee what they have overcome to build the life that they have now. And today, I'm delighted to be talking to Kristin Gestsdottir to talk about her career and the obstacles she's overcome. So, Kristin is a procurement manager for Isavia, which is Iceland's arm's length government body. Isavia handles the operation and development of all airports in Iceland. And currently, Kristin has managed over 100 million of spend in the last few years, driving the procurement for the international airports expansion. Isavia has put Iceland on the map for infrastructure. Its first contract for project management attracted international interest, and there are many more lots to come out over the next few years. Iceland is also a deeply fascinating country. A poster child for the post-2008 recovery, one of the few countries in the world that, under its first female prime minister, prosecuted and imprisoned bankers in the wake of the crash. It has then gone on to reinvent its economic base by leveraging its geography as the halfway point between North America and Europe. Equally, it's fascinating on the gender front. It regularly tops the list of the world's most gender equal countries. It has been the front runner on the Global Gender Gap Index for the last 11 years. Women make up 66% of the graduates from university, hold 48% of the country's parliamentary seats, and over 80% of women in Iceland make up part of the workforce. I believe we can all learn a lot from this cool little country at the top of the globe. I also think that Iceland has the potential to be a game changer for equality in the infrastructure industry. Not because its industry currently as it stands is much better than anywhere else, but because I believe Iceland gets it, and also because Kristin Gestsdottir is leading it. What lots of people don't understand about procurement is it is the power behind investment. The people who run procurement not only hold the purse strings, but they drive the investment criteria. And Kristin has been key in setting up the procurement function. She's smart, she's driven, she's a woman's woman. She's also humble, open, curious, and a strong advocate of other women, all of which makes me a big fan. Kristin, welcome.
Wow, Anne, thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. And I appreciate you reaching out to me as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, do you feel powerful?
No, I never think about myself in any way. I don't think about myself being powerful. I'm just doing my things. I just think about me in that way. And if I wake up in the morning and I look forward to today's projects, then I guess I'm happy. And if I'm able to have an impact at the same time, then I'm even happier.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is because of this. You have to be a little bit of a tech nerd to know that procurement is really important, but it is.
Yes.
Because as we have discussed, procurement is at the intersection between investment and execution, and you get to shape how that is done. And you guys have, I know it's changing with coronavirus, which we can talk about in a minute, but you have about $1 billion of investment that's around, you have potential for us, that's around the airport. And the airport and air traffic is hugely important to Iceland because of this clever economic stimulus you have, which is the en route, the stopover en route, which has really built the economy. And you get to define how that billion is executed on the ground. And I know you've certainly attracted international interest. One of the things we've spoken about is how dire the situation is with UK companies, with something only 1 in 10 of the top UK companies have a female CEO. There's only 12% representation on boards. It's pretty shocking. Are things much better in Iceland?
Are things much better in Iceland? Well, if you ask me this directly, the answer is no. If I'm brutally honest, no. Well, you know, it's not much better, because if you look at the statistics for the last year, it tells us that, okay, women in board of directors are obviously or over 40%, because the legislation, basically we do have a legislation in Iceland that was implemented 2010, but it became effective for public organization 2010 right away. But in 2013, it became effective for private sectors, and therefore in board of directors we do have a good rate of women and men. And we were hoping to see in Iceland that the effect of this legislation would be drilled down to other top layers in companies in Iceland, but that isn't the case. That hasn't happened. Like quite early after the legislation, after 2013, we saw it gradually rise, the rate between men and women in board of directors, and it had a big effect right after the legislation further down the stairs in the lower level organizations. However, if you have a look at the stats today, only 26% women are sitting in board of executives in companies in Iceland right now. And if you have a look at the biggest 100 companies in Iceland, only 10 are CEOs in those, or only 10 women are CEOs in these companies. And if you have a look at the companies that are at the Icelandic Nasdaq stock exchange, then you see there are 19 companies there, and there is no women CEO in any of these companies. So I think, no, this stat talks for itself. The situation is not very good in Iceland either.
And are these all Icelandic companies, or are those construction and infrastructure companies?
These are Icelandic companies, but you have a look at the construction environment, then I think the rate is, according to my information, is about 7.7 of women who are sitting at the executive boards in those companies.
So it's actually worse than at least the top 10 companies in the UK. They're about, as 11, about twice that.
Yeah.
I mean, have you given any thought as a procurer as to what you can do about gender equality, balancing it up in?
Yeah, what we can do, at least we can be responsible, because that is not enough to have these fancy processes written or strategies written in for our organizations or companies. What we need to do, we need to put it in action. And what I can do as part of the procurement environment for Isavia, we can, for example, use it as part of our criteria when we evaluate offers, when we tender out projects. And that's what we've been doing for the last few years. After we started entering out these big projects, we have been taking these measurements and these matters into account, and actually we have been asking like social benefit questions and legacy questions in our tenders, and actually we're making it count in that way.
Good. I mean, I think it's still going to take, what, 95 years, 200 years or something for it ever to balance up?
Yeah, according to the World Economic Forum and the Gender Gap Index, for unfortunately, the economic dimension has regressed the last year, and now they're saying it will take us over 250 years to close the gender gap for the economic dimension. So, like, these news are not good news. So at least we can't just sit here we can't just sit here not doing anything. We have to address this and try to do whatever we can to make change.
We do, because we all have to play a part, and I really think progressive women have got to play a part, and the progressive men that champion us have got to do it, because it's unacceptable and it's been going on for so long now.
Yeah.
You know, I think as a procurer, I would love to kind of take what your best practice is and get it out there. And I don't know what it's going to take for contractors to proactively change, because they're not doing it. I don't see it.
No, and the thing is, like, if you have a look at the numbers as well, because if you have a look at the education ratio in Iceland, then more women are graduated from or being graduated from universities than men in Iceland, and many of them are graduated as an engineer and in that field that are related to construction. So, and if we have a look at the labor market as well, then I think the rate is there are like 78% women who are working on the labor market in Iceland and 85% men. And I just deny to believe that there are not enough women out there who are fit and willing to fill any of these CEO's positions or any of the executive directive positions that are out there.
I think you're dead right, and I absolutely hate that whole bollocks basically of well, women aren't board ready, or women don't want it, or women take other things seriously. Women need to change themselves. I accept we all need to change ourselves. I don't think it's a gender thing, but there's something systemic particularly in construction infrastructure, where there's so little representation from women, and a huge proportion of those companies' turnovers, the revenues of those companies, are coming from public sector spend to be built, to be used on public sector activities, whether it's schools and hospitals and roads and rail and airports. Oh, but somehow it manages to bypass women. It drives me insane. So all I can do is my bit, which is make sure that women that I work with are really well paid. There's no gender pay gap in our company in Shine, and promote good practice wherever I see it, and to call out bad practice where I see it. And I'm tripping over bad practice.
Exactly. I agree.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
fully agree with you.
Well, I'm so pleased that you're on board in Iceland, because I think this is how we will gradually change things. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was your obstacles in your career and how you overcame them. And the first one that you talked to me about was you have a theme running through your obstacles, and it's about self-doubt. And I love talking about self-doubt, because I think overcoming self-doubt is the most, when you look back what you've achieved, I think it's the biggest way to grow. Just standing in front of something and going, I can never do this, and then you do it, and you look back and go, I'm so cool. And your first self-doubt was you kind of fell into your first job in your early career. And your first job, which is with a big company called Alcoa, and you were really talking about whether you could do this job. You're really concerned about whether you could do it. Do you want to tell us about that feeling of self-doubt and how you overcome it and who helped you to do it?
Yeah, well, I had recently moved. I'm from Reykjavik area. I'm from the capital of Iceland. So I had never lived anywhere else actually in Iceland. But in 2009, I moved to the East Coast, and I was only going to stay there, maximum for 2 years. But after these 2 years had passed, then I had to decide whether I should go back and finish another finish my education that I had already started, or if I should try to seek for a job out there, because my husband was already working for Alcoa, and it was, it would have been an opportunity to stay there for a bit longer and get some experience on the job market at that point of time. But the Reyðarfjörður, which is a small what do you call it? It's a small place where we lived. It's not a city, but it's a small place where we lived. And there are not many companies at this place, but Alcoa is actually a big company, and they are located in Reyðarfjörður, east of Iceland. And obviously that's an industry. That's an aluminum industry, and related work, and people that are working there are usually construction related, engineering related, or mechanically related jobs. So I didn't think that my opportunity was that good enough to stay at the East Coast. But when I had already made up my mind, and I had already paid my school fee, and I was about to leave Reyðarfjörður and go back to Reykjavik to finish my education. But then I received a job opportunity from my first boss at Alcoa, and he handed over me the opportunity to start working in the procurement field. and I was hired in to work at the construction contracts, contractor contracts, and he kind of threw me in the deep pool, and that was a huge opportunity for me. And my first stops there were like, okay, why is he hiring me? Because I don't have any education on this, I don't have any experience on this, I never worked in this industry before. I don't have any background. But I just think, if I look back, I just think that everybody, they need this one person that gives them this opportunity. And if you are able to jump on it, I think you should do it, because you learn so much from it. And I was just lucky, because I got lucky there, because I got to work for this amazing company that has like really good processes and strategies, and got all these amazing people on board. And they were my floating devices through my first months and years in my work. So yeah, I got lucky and I learned a lot. And I had never in a million years thought that I would be working for like an aluminum company and working on contracts. But that happened and I liked it. So yeah.
How long before you stopped feeling like you're an imposter and you felt like, yeah, I'm good at this now?
To be quite honest, because I do think it's very important to be able to show vulnerability and being honest. I don't think like any of my time during Alcoa, I thought I was good at it. I think only after I left Alcoa and after I started working for Isavia, then I was able to look back and look in the mirror and see, okay, well, you know, you have gained so much experience, and you know what, you're just good at what you're doing, and you know your stuff. So I think it was only then, after I left the environment and started a career in a new environment, then I was only able to see how far I had become. So yeah.
Good. And you talked there about a really kind mentor and somebody who really supported you. Just tell us a bit about.
Yes. That was a really great gentleman. I was so fortunate to be working with him on these contracts, or on these contractor contracts. And he had recently, he wasn't still working, he was retired, but he was working as a consultant for Alcoa. And he was kind of like, he had this great experience. He had been working for the United Nations before, and so he had been working in the environment, in the international environment before, and he knew his stuff. He like really knew his stuff, and he was always rock solid and relaxed, and it was and he had, I think, almost when you seeked out to him, he always gave the best advice. But this one day he looked up and said, Kristin, you know what? I really like working with you, and the reason why I like working with you is because you are a young woman. I like working with young people, and I like working with you because you are enthusiastic and you are willing to learn. And I really, really hope you will continue working in procurement, because there's never a dull moment in procurement. And those words have stuck with me for the last 9 years, and they frequently are on top of my mind during my work still. So yeah, this man, he had a great impact on me, even though I didn't spend many years with him, but the time I spent with him was a quality time, and he left a great legacy. So yeah.
Good on him. I love to hear that, because I don't think any of us can get on independently. We all need others, and we all need to contribute to others. And it's wonderful to hear it, and it's wonderful that you can acknowledge it.
Yes.
You know, you hear a lot of stories. I did it all by myself. You know,
no.
Really.
I don't think anybody does anything on his own. We all need great people and great team around us to be able to deliver our jobs.
And then tell me about, so then you moved to Isavia, which is a very big job. So because you are at this core of Icelandic I mean, it's not the only economic driver in Iceland, but it's a huge part of it. And you're there in this point of it. So another wave of self-doubt: can I move from the private to the public sector, because it's very regulated? So go on, tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. So when I left Alcoa, my goal was not to be continuing working in the procurement field. I had my eyes on another job, but I saw this advertised and I applied for it, and I went into the interview, and I wasn't I didn't have any interest. But when I walked out of the interview, I was so interested. I was like, okay, I really, really want to get this job, because I don't know, I saw all these opportunities within the companies, and I knew this is a huge company in Iceland, and all the future, how we're thinking about the future and how we're going to make the changes and enlarge the airport. I thought it was so excited, and I saw all the opportunities there, because we didn't have Isavia didn't really have any procurement department. So I was just, okay, so I think we can make huge changes in there, and I think actually I can have an impact on this. So it kind of there was a fire was being lit right away in this interview, and again I got lucky. They offered me the job, and I didn't even have to think about it. I took it right away.
And how confident were you feeling about this one?
Okay, I wasn't feeling that confident, because I was moving from the private sector environment and I was stepping into the public sector environment, and the procurement in the public sector environment is so much more regulated than for the private sector environment. So in my first month, and my first weeks, I sat there and I was just like, okay, so where should I start? Where should I start seeking information? What should I read? And who should I look to for further information? And how can I get started? But I just I accepted all these doubts and all these questions. And I just decided to be vulnerable and go out there and ask the questions. And I went to the market and I visited similar utility companies, just as Isavia, and that are following the same legislation. And I was just so willing to learn from what they had been doing, and taking the best bits and pieces and implementing it into Isavia. And I didn't think it was enough to seek out to the Icelandic market, because they didn't have all the answers to my questions. So I was able to look at the international market and receive a further information and how they have been actually practicing procurement in for the public sectors for the last few years, and how they've been using the regulation for the procurement processes. So what we did as well at Isavia, we bless you, we grabbed the opportunities and decided to learn along the way, and we have been making huge changes to our procurement infrastructure.
I know. I keep an eye on everything you do, because because I want you to get even more progressive with us, and then I want everybody I want you to be the leading way, because I just think you're on the right track of it. But so one of the conversations we had, which I loved, because so few people will come out and actually say this. Let me just see my notes. But fundamentally, it's dealing with great volume, with absolutely overt sexism and patronizing old farts. Mm-hmm. That is a quote from you. Well, it's kind of a quote from you. Because it's so prevalent. So tell me about it, and how do you overcome it, and are you still experiencing it?
Yes. I think maybe I'm not, I don't hear it as much, because and it's sad to say it, because I've gotten used to it. But yeah, it's like ever since I started my foot into the labor market, like I've been working in this like harsh environment. First it was Alcoa, and like that's a man's world. And then you step into the airport operation world, and that's a man's world as well. That's just truth to be told. And yeah, I had like, when I first started, I had like these sentences, oh, she's just a little girl, she doesn't know anything. And yes, and there was another guy who was working actually in my company, and he had a look at me and said, like, you know what, you're just completely useless. Because the thing is, I just think those men that really allow themselves to talk in this way, they just don't really get it. They just don't really get what you're doing and where you're going with the changes that you're trying to make. So the reaction, this is like their like defense reaction. They just say these phrases or these words to protect themselves, and it just reveals their lack of misunderstanding what you're doing, or just not understanding it at all. And my best way to overcome kind of like those views is just to get the job done and show them in action like what you're made of, and not by replying to them in the same manner. And that, I think that is always the best way of a comeback, is to finish your work the way you said you were going to do it.
Yeah, that's spot on. And things must be tough for you guys at the moment with coronavirus. It must have had a real impact. What's the story there, and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, COVID-19 has affected Isavia very much. It has had a great effect on us. For example, the revenue for the parent company has dropped for over 95% for the last quarter. So that's huge.
It's dropped. Did you say over 95%?
Yeah.
Wow.
The drop of the revenue has been over 95% for the last quarter for the parent company.
Wow.
And just if you have a look at the air traffic overseas, has dropped for I think it's been 63% between months, or like between September 2020 and 2019. And mainly, and then I'm talking about all the overflights. I'm talking about the scheduled, the non-scheduled, the general aviation, and the military. So most of the airplanes that are crossing the ocean or in our airspace right now are cargo flights. So obviously the passenger flight has just completely dropped. And the flights to and from Iceland, it has dropped about 77% between September 2020 and September 2019. So yeah, there has been the coronavirus has had a significant impact on our operation.
And it must have massively impacted tourism.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, because the country's so reliant on tourism. How is it coping without it?
Yeah, are we coping? I'm not sure. How are we going to restart, and how are we gonna and how our company and what companies are actually will be surviving in the next year after the COVID-19? Like we don't really see the end of it right now. And if you have a look at our company Isavia, our assumptions are that we will be able to welcome passengers again in April 2021. And again, we don't think we will be able to reach the same amount of passengers until 2024. At least that's how our assumptions are at the moment.
Oh, tough times.
Yeah.
Yeah, really tough. Is this period, this sort of stopgap, allowing you guys to do any thinking or planning for the future, or how are you filling your time as a company?
Yeah, what we've been doing, we have been trying to streamline our processes, make the most of the time, and streamline the processes, because the last few years we've been running so fast. We've been basically, if you can say this in English and Iceland, this is a phrase, like we've been chasing our tail, and we haven't had the time to polish and to build our processes. But so a lot of our time is now being, so a lot of our times now are, we are spending a lot of our times now to streamline our processes. And what we're doing as well, we are setting a goals for the future for the company. And again, we made changes to the organization in the end of last year. So we've been implementing these changes as well. So we haven't been sitting at a desk doing nothing. We've kind of been really busy, even though we're missing the passengers. We've kind of been implementing changes, and we've been building our foundation for the future, and we are setting ourselves goals as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, the minute we are allowed to travel, I would like the whole Shine team to come to Iceland and have our retreat and meet up and plot and plan how we can get other procurers across the world to be as aspirational as you guys are.
Well, thank you. And of course, we will welcome you from Shine.
Thank you very much.